subsequent maps. All four do get played, with there being a fifth tiebreaker if it is needed. But without any further ado, let's go ahead and look at Nepal.
Captain uses ultimate loud voice to lead the team. Okay, so loud voice, big voice, lead the team, shot caller. Yeah. We also saw in Buteik's sort of pre-game interview there. He believes tank position is very important. I have to agree with him here, very important for leading that charge. So let's see exactly how he's going to lead that charge with DeToNator.KOREA.
So they just sort of ease their way out the gate for now. Actually interesting to see the double Pharah to come out here, but so far it's actually Blitz kind of getting the ground control. Good run around by Daheem to catch Buteik on the side here. And that's just kind of forced Talon back, not really able to get much ground control themselves.
I do want to comment on the Pharah as well, but we've started to see a lot more Pharah being played on specifically Sanctum now, just kind of taking advantage of the low amount of ground space. Because there's not a lot of ground space for you to stand on, there's just there's a lot of places where you can just fall off and die. Well, Pharah has a pretty easy shot, so it's been this kind of nice adaptation that teams have really started to get used to.
Well, then, I mean, you look at where the positioning has to happen. There's a very narrow patch of ground that Pharah has to be bombarding, but hey, presto, that's one way to deal with the Pharah. They just air shot out both the Pharah and the Mercy. That's pretty hardcore stuff to come out of Blitz, and kind of seals the deal on that fight before it even gets underway. So Talon, they're really struggling to find their way in under Blitz's Pharah and have now made the change.
Exactly, and Talon, they're feeling the pressure, right? Persia's feeling that pressure personally, changing onto the McCree. He has to now be the guy to take down Blitz, and Blitz has so far been reigning just supreme in the skies. Look, the damage right now, how much damage Talon have to just take on their way in. If he doesn't connect a lot of these shots and really trigger these kills, well, it's going to be DeToNator.KOREA still just winning these fights.
And I mean, even as he is threatening them, as long as they're, oh dear, there it goes, straight in on top of Persia. Blitz knows his priority target, does get traded out for it though. Gonna have to see a res to come in on top of both Persia and Blitz. So even Stevens now as they look to break out the fight onto the point, but losing Buteik, that might just stop Talon from really getting onto this in any significant fashion. They're not getting any kind of trade backs here, not really getting enough damage out, and yeah, just not finding their way in. It's taking them too long to even get started.
Speaking of not finding their way in, they're literally backing out right now. The pressure from DeToNator.KOREA just so much. Even when Blitz went down, that was their timing window. But they had lost Persia as well, so they didn't have their main DPS. They couldn't break through the tank line. Modern and Krong kept that front line secure. Yeah,
and once again, Modern's going to go ahead and do it. I mean, Talon have barely even got past this little choke point here just through the combined efforts of Blitz and Co. And now DeToNator.KOREA just kind of following up on that same execution. Slay Vega trying to change that tune with the self-destruct, but just not getting the targets. And Raphael went down on the side on that as well. Buteik barely staying alive there. It might not even matter. Persia's already down on the back side. They do trade off on Modern, but even now they're still not getting enough of a heads up here. Talon just trying to slowly muscle DeToNator.KOREA off the point, but without the kills, eventually they're going to find themselves getting muscled off in their own right. The Transcendence helps them keep presence. Actually, Sleepy Bear taking a dive there, plus Krong losing the mech. They may have just eked their way in. Indeed, they have. Very nicely executed there, Talon, really on a knife's edge, but it is only 0 to 99.
Was that Transcendence that swung things around as well? The fact that Sleepy Bear went down, Blitz as a Pharah player without the Mercy combo there, he's extremely vulnerable. Now they've sort of realized as well, look, the Pharah is being a little, it's a little bit too risky now. Change onto the Genji instead. They got a lot of time to work with. 0% is where Talon had to start with. DeToNator.KOREA led by 99%. So I mean, they're going to have a couple of fights in here, a couple of Dragon Blades even, and we actually know that Blitz, to be quite fair, his Genji's been his best pick.
Yeah, and I also like that he swapped off to Pharah now that they don't have that same kind of space control, but Talon just kind of giving it up, funneling themselves into a corridor where DeToNator.KOREA just picked them apart. Talon just kind of conceded all that ground for really nothing. They weren't getting particularly pressured. That was just pure threat, and they kind of crumbled to that. Maybe over-respecting DeToNator.KOREA, and I mean, DeToNator are going to take that and run with it.
Well, this time they didn't have the resources, right? This time for Talon Esports, they had to just sort of sit there and take the brunt of it. DeToNator.KOREA will be happy to oblige. We have to deliver that as they now use all these ultimates they have. Oh, speaking of which, though, it was a pretty good boop up the edge by Haru. Unfortunately, not quite good enough to stop this cat from going over.
Yeah, it was only the one, and it was just sort of a rescue thing. They didn't really have the numbers mustered at that point, unfortunate as it is to say. And that was not the start that Talon were really looking for. They spent most of that just kind of getting pinned down by the Pharah. And then when they finally did break out, first of all, it was very, very hard fought. And that really got to a situation where
Yeah.
They didn't really have any particular advantages. They just sort of managed to outmaneuver and outfrag. That could have just as easily been DeToNator 100 to 0ing. And even then, immediately afterwards, they ended up losing another fight in pretty significant fashion.
You know, I want to kind of mention that Pharah again, right? Because when you lose that Pharah duel to start with, and very quick fact here, Krong has the most female fans. He's very gentle and very polite, so go get him, ladies. Anyway, but just to sort of close a little on that, when you lose your Pharah, you can't really respawn as a Pharah because you get stuck in the room. New map though, new opportunity for Talon. We're on our way to Village. So far, it's not going to be anybody running the heavy tank stuff that we've been seeing. This is pretty traditional, both teams on the top side.
Yeah, I think that's quite interesting to say the least, and in this particular formation, it seems that DeToNator are kind of coming out the better for it. Blitz picking up the Sombra and Dahim over on the McCree. They're just kind of raining bullets here, and Talon, yeah, I mean, this is really rough. Even, I mean, no one's dead for Talon, sure, but they've had to back off so much that the point does get to go the way of DeToNator, and they're not really finding their way in either. The Junkrat spam damage just isn't connecting in the right places, getting people low enough to then capitalize.
Look at the early Deadeye as
so
well.
big.
Doesn't quite catch anyone because the bubble did come down, and the EMP is probably going to come in soon for Blitz as well.
Yeah, it split the team though, and that could be all it takes for DeToNator to capitalize on this one, because Talon now need to regroup, and like you said, there's time to finish charging this EMP, which can now be a factor. Great catch on Apache though, as Krong gets demacked, and this EMP may actually come in just a touch too late out of Blitz. In fact, I think, yeah, he is going to just go ahead and hold on to it, knows that there isn't really enough to follow up on it for this fight. They let that one go the way of Talon, but very nicely fought by them.
Look at the timing from Talon as well. They didn't waste any of it when they came back in. They got wiped fairly quickly, or they lost enough members and they had to back off. As soon as the respawners were available, Talon just went straight for the point. DeToNator.KOREA were caught off guard. The Deadeye was available, didn't catch anybody. Blitz didn't quite have the EMP yet, and Apache got sniped down by his counterpart MCD, so a lot of things went correct for Talon there.
Yeah, and very well reacted to, but there's the EMP, big connect. Raphael dunked, plus the Riptire out of Persia to take Modern off the table. That actually turns it a little bit more in the way of Talon.
Another Deadeye.
Another Deadeye. And by the way, of course, Raphael died, which means they weren't able to take advantage of that tool. That's going to pop Slay Vega's mech. Has to throw the self-destruct to preserve it. But in that time, MCD goes down, and DeToNator are just eking out a numbers advantage here, which they are now compounding with the ultimates they're cycling into. Talon have no such rescue mechanics, no defensive ultimates at their disposal. And they weren't able to leverage that Deadeye on the defense earlier, given that Raphael went down so quickly. That was a pretty well-handled fight from DeToNator.
And now you're really starting to see why these are the two teams at the top of the standings in Group A, right? Because they're so quick to respond. Both of these teams, when they lose a fight, they stray back into there to use the advantage that they had. Blitz, the perfect EMP. And actually, if you look at MCD with the Transcendence, came in to counter the EMP, but even then, that was not quite good enough for Talon, so they couldn't hold on to the point. This has gone neck and neck so far.
And I love this really aggressive defense out of DeToNator, just getting right on in the face of Talon, stopping them from even getting their setup underway. Buteo getting really low as well. May even go down, indeed he does. Daheen gets the final connect on that, and now that's going to have to be the res to come in for Haru. So DeToNator just keeping Talon stuck here. It is just wasted time for Talon.
Talon finally do manage to break out though, and Raphael with his own Deadeye. Can he find anything? Gets at least one, and maybe that's a player advantage. Whoa!
Whoa! Yeah, I mean, hey, it may not have been the player advantage they needed, but the Riptire kind of seals it through as Krong was out of the mech, only catching one in that, and that means Talon get themselves back on the point. They're going to need a pretty hefty defense, though. Possibly going to need to bottle up DeToNator.KOREA the same way DeToNator just did to them if they really want to even this one up.
Exactly, because they need to even the time up. They need to even the objective up, and that's what they're missing right now. So far, each team has traded fight wins. When the other team gets wiped, they come back in and they eventually win that one. It did take Talon a little bit of time. There is now another EMP. So Talon, once again, they got to find the correct answer. They're not going to have the Transcendence to counter out the EMP this time around either.
In fact, they're not going to have many tools at all as the EMP gets straight onto them. Once again, Raphael quick to go down in the scrap. Trying to get the trade backs, but Krong and Modern have held onto their lives for long enough. Slay Vega does at least get to preserve the mech, and they've traded a few back. It seems that they may have just closed out of those tanks in time, but DeToNator had the presence on the point. Now Dahim and Blitz just set to run circles around what remains of Talon. Raphael going to sort of make his way back to the fight, but too immobile, unfortunately. And even then, we'd have to get a flashbang down on someone. They've got to get someone in on the point, but none of these heroes have a blink. None of them have a way to get to that point quickly, and that does mean it goes the way of DeToNator.
right at the end there, the fact that DeToNator.KOREA were able to get that cap over, that's step one, right? Like, that's very important. They pushed the cap over. If they didn't cap it that early, if they capped it when they actually won that team fight, there would have been plenty of time for Talon to come back for that final recontest. You've got to credit him as well. The man got himself triple kill, pretty much on his own. Even with the response kills from Talon, just not enough to him because he was still alive, because Blitz was still alive. The two biggest, you know, the two DPS players, the two players that make the biggest plays that really give DeToNator.KOREA their power, they're still alive, they're still killing people, and they're the ones making sure DeToNator get the win.
And I think that's ultimately what's kind of going on here for a lot of the time. I mean, the setup is there out of both of these teams, right? Like, they're both trading a lot of blows. They're both getting each other low. The execution is relatively the same, with the chief difference being the DPS is closing out on the groundwork laid down. And you've got to say that, yeah, on the whole, especially Daheem, but also to a lesser extent Blitz. And the reason I say to a lesser extent is because of Sanctum, where actually Blitz is more a proponent of that setup damage that Daheem then follows up on. But that's exactly what's going on here. So much of the time Daheem is getting that follow-up that players like Raphael, unfortunately, are not.
Well, I got to speak to Sec, because I think for Village, I'll start with Village first, actually, because it's the most recent one. But with Village, they were just going back and forth. One fight went and then another fight went the other way. Back and forth right until the end. So it was, you know, I like to say that was a pretty even affair. I'd like to have seen a Shrine, because I think Shrine would have been pretty even as well. But let's take a look at Sanctum, because the Pharah versus Pharah gameplay was pretty definitive of why DeToNator.KOREA won. The fact that, again, Blitz won that initial Pharah duel, killed both the Pharah and the Mercy on the other side by himself. But the problem is, the reason Raphael, or rather, you know, Raphael can't come in back as the Pharah or anything like that is because you just kind of get spawn camped in a way. You don't get any space to work with there. You start in the small room, so you saw what Blitz was doing. He's raining down rockets specifically into the entrances, into the corners. The spam damage, the splash damage is extreme, and it's kind of like a Junkrat that you can't easily contest because he's all the way flying in the air. So if you are playing Pharah as a losing team, you can't walk out of the base. Yeah,
and I did like the change. I liked the adaptation to try and get over onto McCree, but I mean, it's something that's going to take...
Persian, that's right. I was trying to think of it. It was actually Persian, not Raphael. But
You're quite right. But it's something that's actually going to take a little bit of time, even getting that counter going. Like, you've got to actually get the correct picks in the correct order. And while you're doing it, you're going to be under constant pressure from the enemy team. But Nepal, let's wrap it up in a ribbon, move it on to the past, as Talon have picked Hollywood. So, I don't know, do we feel like this changes things, really?
I think both teams are fairly confident here. They both have Widowmaker players. They both have Sombra players, which are two of the, you know, sort of big sort of picks on Hollywood. Beyond that, you know, I'm really enjoying the speed coming out of these teams. I think that's been very important so far. You saw that across both Shrine and Sanctum. So now coming on to Hollywood. And by the way, the Junkrat plays the double kill from Persia as well onto the Riptire. That was pretty extreme after the fact that Raphael got himself a Deadeye. So all these ultimates coming into play that are really useful. I think for both teams, they all have their bases covered for all the possible compositions that they'd like to run.
I think that's something interesting that you do mention there, and it's something we've not actually been able to see a whole lot of just with how these teams have been fighting. I don't know that either of these teams necessarily has an edge in terms of the macro, and I think actually here is where that's going to become quite a bit more of a factor, where Momentum is a big proponent, because neither of these teams have a particular edge. I see this actually coming a lot more down to just individual execution during the course of fights. And I think it's interesting that you mentioned the Widowmakers to that end. I do kind of hope we see a Widow duel, actually.
And Daheem has been pretty brutally effective on all the hit scans, to be quite honest. And that combo, that Daheem Blitz combo, we saw them go to work on Village, how effective that was, even though the rest of their team was pretty much dead. Those two on their own were just so incredibly good. And Blitz on the Genji, we got a glimpse of that. You saw it in the play of the game as well, when he came through and he absolutely annihilated. This is DeToNator.KOREA, so coming into this attack, rather than defending first, not expecting the Widowmaker to start things off with, not expecting the Widowmaker to hit the B. Either team could be running a Junkrat or a Sombra onto A, but the tried and true for DeToNator.KOREA is just dive.
And it's interesting, that is generally speaking the tried and true for Talon as well, but we did actually see them hovering over a more sort of triple tank, potentially quad tank oriented lineup, so not opting into it. Just going to stick with dive, and it looks like they're actually sticking to this Hanzo. It's not just a scouting Hanzo, so this is just playing into the plan of how they want to dislodge DeToNator.
Well, I think Talon were expecting big tanks, right? They were expecting Orisa Hog, and Hanzo would have been very effective. Now they get the bad news. It's not Orisa Hog, it's Tracer Genji. Suddenly Persia is like, well, this is going to be a tough game, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, already trying to measure the aggression out of Modern. Takes a scatter arrow to the face, or maybe even to the feet. And there is the one trade back, but DeToNator.KOREA are the ones who have to actually give the space, give the respect here to Talon for getting that pick. MCD, though, they wanted to wait for the respawn, but it gives them a window before Modern rejoins.
How long before Talon actually make a move, though? They can't wait too long because you sort of said it yourself. Modern will rejoin this fight. That's what DeToNator.KOREA are waiting for. That's what they're buying time for. And Buteyka's so low. Talon might have to back off already, and they don't want to do that right now.
Yeah, didn't quite find the opening that they needed with Buteyka going for that initial dive. So yeah, like you said, have to back off. And are going to do so. Run into a Dragon Blade Blitz, just opens up, goes to town. And look at that. There was no hesitation and absolute coordination out of DeToNator there. Talon trying to make the safe play by backing up, ended up giving Blitz all the space he needed.
And of course, Modern came back in, right? And he was a big part of that counter dive that ended up coming through for DeToNator.KOREA. But Blitz spotting that back line as Talon was basically trying to rotate backwards. No one saw Blitz coming. That's exactly how he likes to play. Dragon Blade comes on top of 2. The rest of DeToNator.KOREA pile on. And Talon, they don't know what hit him.
Pulse Bomb well wide out of Raphael. Just blew up a couple of paving stones there. There's now Talon just trying to set up around the side. Also going in for a Sombra. Yeah, Apache early with the Coalescence. Did take a bit of damage. It's going to be the sound barrier out of Haru to try and secure Talon to get them on to the point. They are at least able to kind of break in. Catching Krong as well is a decent one. He wasn't able to remake in his own right. So now actually Talon with that numbers advantage, also with an ultimate advantage, but they need to get the execution. MCD forced to actually use the Transcendence there to save his own life, but it now serves as a springboard for them to close out the rest of these kills. But now Modern has the Primal Rage to stall out. Krong can re-enter the fray with a self-destruct, and Daheem has still got free reign right now. The longer that goes on for, yeah, Persia down. Like I said, the longer that goes on for, the harder it gets for Talon to win. They didn't shut down the right tools in time, and DeToNator just kind of spring back.
That's a real painful thing to see for Talon Esports because they had such a great start. They put on a lot of damage onto Apache. He had something like less than 10 HP using the Coalescence to try and, I don't know, make his way back in there. A little bit risky. He could have died in mid-Coalescence. Yeah. Just by the way, got healed up by his teammate Sleepy Bear. DeToNator.KOREA, they started using a bunch of ultimates. They still lost members. Blitz died on 80-something%. They needed to wait for Blitz to come back to the blade, and here he comes.
That's the big commit though out of Persia, but it's not quick enough to stop those ultimates coming out. But they don't get anything for the blade, nor do they get anything for the Coalescence, nor did they get anything with the Pulse Bomb. There is no better moment now for Talon, but even then, it is a rocky road. They have lost Slay Vegas Mech, but they've got Krong, who was not able to reset with a self-destruct, and that should be enough to get them solidly set up on the point. Now, DeToNator do not have the members to rotate back onto it, unlike last time. Even though Daheem is still alive, he does not have the tank still in the fray. No one there to protect him. He goes down. Apache now dead as well, and Talon are going to get us into Streets phase.
And this time, Talon did out-rotate DeToNator.KOREA because you saw the game plan coming out of them. They knew the blade was available. They knew it was effective last time, and they wanted to use it again. Talon had different thoughts. They kept the EMP. Persia did die within the previous fight, which is unfortunate because maybe they could have used it to win. But this time they came in, out-rotated DeToNator.KOREA, used the EMP while DeToNator.KOREA were looking for their own fight, and it was deadly effective. Blitz got nothing. Talon, they capped.
And in a way, it's almost better than stopping the ultimate with the EMP, is having it happen first because he's got no mobility. And now, completely off it, it's just not even going to be a factor, though. Daheem already making things happen with the Widowmaker, and that was a pretty quick stick send. Apache even being the one to catch MCD. Daheem,
he's still alive!
Yeah, I mean, he's still alive. He's just sort of, what he's actually doing there is helping run down the tanks as they're trying to retreat, just throwing in the extra DPS.
No, it's just still going to work right there because, you know, we hinted at the Daheem Widowmaker. He's been deadly so far in the I was going to say the series, and the series has just started, but he's been deadly so far in the entire season. You're starting to see why everybody's got to be reasonably concerned about this, and Haru's just playing the dice roll there. Could have easily been killed.
That was expensive, that last one, actually, for both teams, but now you've got to consider that EMP advantage for Persia could be all they need. It's sort of the great equalizer. A good EMP completely changed
Blitz
the
has one, though.
fight, but that's the thing. Now, Blitz has managed to get one as well, and it's going to be DeToNator being the proactive team. Coalescence in, EMP out, and Talon already taking damage, losing members. There goes Persia and Haru. And Talon just going to get really beaten down from that one. They do get a couple of ultimates out, but I mean, I don't know that they really have time to be using up to draw ultimates out so that they can go in for their own fights with advantage.
Well, it was an EMP sort of tug-of-war, right? This is usually what happens. You know, sometimes you see both teams use EMP, but likely what you see is one team will use it, the other team will say, we're not going to do it, we're going to wait till the next fight, and this is where Talon have a massive advantage. EMP already out.
Straight in, but the sound barrier. Well, I say but the sound barrier on top of it as well, just giving them plenty of legs in the fight. And DeToNator not able to use any of their ultimates. That's the gong sounding, but with the way the clock has gone, DeToNator get one last chance at a defense. They've got a good run of ultimates for it, including an EMP of their own. And if they win it, that's it.
That's a huge amount of charge for Blitz as well, though, right? Despite dying, despite having his team entirely wiped, the seesaw does entirely swing the other way around. Oh. This could be the EMP right here. That would be reasonably devastating, but they are picking their moment. They need this fight to be the best one.
Yeah, Talon read it. Modern goes in, though, with the Primal Rage. They know that they can also just stall up Talon and wait for a window. There indeed it comes. The self-destruct does not quite connect to anything from Krong, and he does go down. Sound barrier barely saves Modern, but it is plenty enough with the Coalescence down as well. Talon just lacking the presence now on the cart itself. Did not have enough time left to afford that second fight loss. That wasn't even where I was expecting DeToNator to take the fight. I was expecting the cart to get even further around, so DeToNator taking it earlier means they now have a much easier run in towards their own completion of the map.
That's all they needed at the end of the day, and that very first EMP, I say the first one, but the first really impactful one that we really needed to see from DeToNator.KOREA, it was Blitz on top of everyone else on Talon. Now, if that was the other way around, I talk about this EMP seesaw where one team will have it, and then the other team will have it, and then back to the first team again. If that was in Talon's favor, if they had EMP'd first, got in that fight when pushed a little bit further, forced maybe then to have DeToNator.KOREA respond with their EMP, maybe Talon lose it, but they get to come in at the end with that EMP advantage instead of the other way around. That would have allowed Talon to perhaps push it towards the end, but because it was not the fact, because it was Blitz with the EMP and not with Talon, that's why DeToNator.KOREA secure it.
And we're also seeing as a, sort of proponent of that, rather, that is what this is a symptom of. We're just seeing that extra level of proactivity out of DeToNator. That's really all it is. I mean, if you are getting that EMP connection in first, when both have it up, it's generally because you are playing a little bit more decisively. You know, it is unlikely that it's because you caught out the enemy team or something like that, or they just forgot to use it. It's because you are going, we have a tool that we need to use, let's go in and, use it first. Let's make our opportunity happen. Let's not wait for them to come to us. And that's what we need to see out of Talon here if they want to start kind of turning this one around, because right now, DeToNator get to call all the shots. Talon are just playing to the beat of DeToNator's drum. And that was mostly evident, I think, in that A push from Talon, right? Because Talon had some moments there. They had that big punish onto Modern to start things out with. They ran that Hanzo. They thought it was going to be an Orisa Hog defense, the kind of Orisa Hog defense, not quite the Hog part, but that Talon are running right now with this Orisa. This is where you want to be playing Hanzo into. Talon thought that was going to be the case. They still got a kill, but they couldn't do enough with it. Modern respawned. Blitz had that huge Dragon Blade, and after that first fight win for DeToNator, it was all them for a very long time, but now the other way around. We see Blitz back onto the far. We already know how good he is, but Raphael, he's ready with the McCree. And in fact, I think the whole of Talon are relatively ready here as well. They've kind of got all the disruption and displacement. Shy of having a Roadhog, they should actually give DeToNator a fair run. I mean, you already see that on Sleepy Bear getting super low, and Apache can't really turn his attention away from Blitz without leaving him super vulnerable to Raphael. But now that they're in the position in the skies, start to rain the damage into the restaurant where Talon is set up. And yeah, that's one tick. Talon need to get out of here, need to start challenging the ground game, or they're just going to find themselves unable to actually get presence on the point, just kind of losing it by sheer merit of not being able to contest it. Nearly all the way over now. Someone's got to get on it. It's going to be Buteuk. and slay Vega, but the moment they step out, they get absolutely drilled down. The Coalescence from Sleepy Bear not even needed. The Pulse Bomb was the only thing committed, and even then, it felt almost like an afterthought.
It's the flying Junkrat, right? This is the kind of spawn camp, this is kind of area control. It's not quite spawn, but at this point it might as well be, as DeToNator.KOREA are moving towards that defender spawn. But what Blitz offers on this fire is just so effective, pushing Talon back into small rooms. Raphael now with the Widowmaker, he's got to get a lot of work done, but he doesn't have the space to work with.
Now Talon just kind of, I mean, really backs up against the wall in this defense. They don't even have the kind of position that they really need if they want to be stopping up this cart. So first they've got to take that position off DeToNator, then they've actually got to fight on the cart and stop it completely. Rez coming in onto Blitz. It was a good shot, and that ultimate is off the table, but DeToNator still hold that ground. Talon are not making any headway here. And now DeToNator, they kind of got the end in their sights here. They just want to take fights. They want to get, you know, quick wins if they can so help it. Bahim! Headshot onto Raphael, trades that one back, and now Sleepy Bear opening up. DeToNator have decided that this is the time to press the go button.
This might be the last fight.
I think it could well be, especially with Persia going. They were banking on that EMP, stalling out for it, and now it is not an option for Talon as Bootail drops as well. And I don't think MCD is going to get close enough to that payload to contest it. It's looking like DeToNator, pretty smooth win.
That was a very clean attack. One attempt the entire way through, even at the end there. It was just Talon Esports trying to adapt the best that they can. Raphael onto the Widowmaker, good. You do want a Widowmaker, especially when you're up against a Pharah. He did kill Blitz twice while he was on the Pharah, but still, you forgot about Daheem. Daheem's also sniping. He's expecting. Maybe they're going to run a Widowmaker. Let's counter-snipe. We know Daheem is a great shot, and indeed he was. As soon as Raphael went down, Daheem was uncontested. The rest of DeToNator.KOREA strolling on through, Blitz or not.
I wish I could actually... I can't do it because it's got a rude word, but that just made me think of Forgot About Dre. Like, nowadays, everybody want to talk like they got something to say, but nothing.
They forgot about Daheem.
Yeah. Those mother huggers acting like they forgot about Daheem.
And that's the thing, because, you know...
And if you forget about it, he'll remind you very quickly.
And there wasn't that much distance, right? It was only sort of midway through that second camp. Talon didn't do a good enough job of pushing themselves over to finish B, and a lot of that comes down to the sort of flow back. And when I say flow back, I'm talking about the fact that Talon themselves on A struggled so much. They only capped it towards the end, didn't have enough time onto B, couldn't find enough momentum onto B, so they only got halfway. Swing it the other way to DeToNator.KOREA. First attempt to get themselves on A. Lock Talon inside the cafe. Don't even let them out of there. Just close the doors right on top of them. One tick for free, second tick almost for free, barely a contest, and then they press the trigger. They actually get the kills late enough that Talon went down as the camp went over. That means for DeToNator.KOREA, they get the momentum onto B. They set up so close. I said spawn camp on A. They basically went and spawn camped on B as well. And that was the kind of thing. It was just Talon kind of not having any feet.
And that's the thing, I mean, that particular kind of set play for point A offense where you're just kind of looking to, you know, you want to force them back and get presence on the point such that they have to attack onto you. There is a way to deal with that, and the way to deal with that is, I mean, for starters, try not to get in that situation in the first place. But once you find yourself in the situation, you've got to proactively seek to break out of it. The moment you are breaking out of it because 2 ticks have gone and you have to go now or never, you've kind of already lost because now you're fighting on their terms. They've dictated everything that happens during that point A. And, I mean, once again, we've got to go back to this thing of this is really just Talon through and through, playing to the beat of DeToNator's drums. DeToNator are setting the pace, and they are running it faster. They're running it, rather running at that pace better than Talon. Talon looking a little bit kind of out of breath.
You also mentioned individual execution, and I got to say, individually, when you look at some of those plays made, Daheem has to be the highlight there as the guy that was just completely nailing shots. And let's even talk about when Daheem wasn't hitting shots. And mostly when he wasn't hitting shots, it's not because he missed, it's because he was running away. But even as he runs away, he leads guys like Bootail on Winston, just having to follow him, and it's not quite good enough from Talon. That is 2 maps out of the way, though. When we come back, the possible 2 remaining maps in the series between Talon and DeToNator.KOREA. Don't go anywhere.